If you're going to buy something on Amazon.com, they're never down. No. And if they were down for 20 minutes, they'd probably lose millions and millions of dollars, right? So we live in a different world today. So let's talk a little bit about how we got there. So there was physical hardware. I mean, people were hosting websites on, on their own computer in their basement for a very long time. And if you couldn't get to it all the time, that was fine, right? But then we moved towards servers and a greater expectation of uptime. And then from there, the next sort of iteration was virtual machines. Talk a little bit about virtual machines. What was it like to package up a virtual machine and deploy something from it?
There was a lot to it, really, and it had a lot of variance in terms of people's opinions. So when you go change a job, or maybe a new person comes on or leaves, then a lot of those opinions can come and go. And it was a really difficult packaging something stable for everybody to use, in my opinion.
The difficulty being the incredible variance for options in terms of operating system, or what were all the different code?
I come from a kind of a Linux background, so making sure that all the right versions of the packages are installed. Image magic was a nightmare. Things like that, if you had to do any kind of image manipulation, could get really hairy, especially with security updates. So you re-roll all your VMs, and it was a lot more overhead.
Okay, and for people who don't know the specifics of what a virtual machine is, I think a lot of people picture, the early days of running a Windows box in a window on top of your Mac, or the other way around, as the case may be. I mean, that's sort of a very high level what a virtual machine is, but is there a maybe better explanation, or is that the whole thing?
Well, it's pretty accurate. I mean, technically a virtual machine is something that, you have a base operating system that lives on hardware, and you have a hypervisor, which is a translation layer that sits in front of that and allows for any number of guest operating systems to sit on top of that.
And so then when you're deploying virtual machines and you want to have, you have a huge uptime need or a massive scaling event, why were virtual machines difficult to orchestrate? We're working up to Kubernetes here, so talk about the things that were painful before Kubernetes, if you can remember that far back.
Yeah, I mean, you're still bound to physical hardware, right? So, and even in cloud talk that you have today, you're still bound to physical hardware, but that's abstracted so far away from operators who are actually running infrastructure. But when you're running something like VMware, which is probably the most popular hypervisor manager for virtual machines, you were still bound to the hardware that you had running in your own cabinets in your own data center. Okay. So a massive scaling event would literally take your engineers to have to go down and physically rack and stack new hardware, install base operating systems, install a hypervisor, and then figure out how you were going to bin pack virtual machines on top of that.
Okay. So in addition to just saying I want more virtual machines, you also had to figure out the hardware piece behind that. Were you ever deploying more than one virtual machine on a single server, or was it usually one-to-one?
Well, no, that was the offering of virtualization.
That was the whole beauty of virtualization. That's what made that a big deal.